Just so you know, they can hear. And it is recording. All right, good evening. It's 7 o'clock, so it's showtime. All right, so it looks like a lot of the stuff for week 7 had to do with arrays again. We've actually been dealing with arrays for a couple of weeks, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time on every aspect of an array, but I will go back over some of it. And if you need me to talk more about them, just let me know. So let's get started. So an array is just a sequence of elements. And so what does it look like in Python? Let's have a variable equals, a variable equals, and you define array by having these two brackets. And inside the brackets, you put what you want each item or each element in the array to be. Let's just make the alphabet, or at least part of the alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and we'll stop there for now. So this is an array, and the elements of the array are these individual letters. And so we can print out this array if we want. So let's do a print the array, and let's see what happens when we print it out. And it just tells back to us all the elements in the array. So that is an array. It is a collection or a sequence of individual elements. And you can do lots of different things with these individual elements. For example, let's say if we wanted to modify individual elements. Well, if you see right now, the first element is an A, the second element is a B, the third is a C. What if for some reason we wanted, instead of an A, we wanted it to be Z, right? So if we print right now, it's going to print an A. But we can take the element, give it an index. What I mean by the index is which item in this array are we going to refer to. Now these indexes are 0 based, meaning the first item is index 0 This is index 1, this is index 2, and so on and so forth. So when we say A with the index of 0, we're talking about the very first one. So actually, let's print just that out. Let's print out A sub 0. When we print that, you'll see it is just the A itself. Let's print that. And sure enough, there it prints out just the A. All right. Let's see if I make that bigger. Yeah, that's a little bit easier to see. Okay. So what if we want to modify it? We don't want it to be A anymore. We want it to be, assign it Z, for example. Now when we print out, let's just print out the whole array. And we'll print out the whole array here. When we print this out, we'll see that the first item will no longer be an A, it'll be a Z. Let's save it. Let's print it. And sure enough, the first time we print the array, it does start with an A. We modified the first element, turned it into Z, and sure enough, there it now prints out as a Z. And you can do that for any of them. We can do it for the fourth one, whatever that is. You know, that's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the E. So instead of E, let's just say it's a T or something. You know, I don't know, whatever you want it to be. Now let's print this out, and we'll see that it then changed from an E to a T. So that's how you modified it. And it doesn't have to just be letters. These can be any Python variable in here. So, like right here, we changed the fourth item. It wasn't E, we changed it to a T. I mean, we can change it to a number, 3, 4, 5. Let's save that, let's print it. And you can see here, that item is now 3, 4, 5. So all of these items, they don't even have to be the same type. They can be really anything that Python will accept. Okay, so that's how you can modify values. And, you know, this could be useful. Let's say if we had some numbers in here, 5, 6. Let's say we wanted to add something, right? Let's say we wanted to do the sum is A sub 0 plus A with index 1. And let's print out that sum. So what should this print out? Well, A with index 0 is this. A with index 1 is this. So if I add those two things together, I should get a 3. Save it. Let's run it. And sure enough, there's the answer 3. So that's how we can access individual elements in our array and how we can modify the values of it. And, you know, we can do some useful math or calculations with it. So let's talk about how we can do something to every element in the array. And what I mean by that is doing a loop for every item in our array. There's kind of two ways you can do it. One way is, it looks like this, for X in A. What this will do, it'll be a loop for every item in this array, and there are 6 items in here. It'll loop this many times. It'll loop 6 times, one loop for each item, and each time in the loop, X will be whatever item that we're on. So the first time in the loop, X is 1. The second time, X is 2. The third time, X is 3. Actually, let's make these numbers not in order. Say 4, 2, 7, 99, 1. All right. And for X and A, let's print out what X is. So what we should see printed out here is, one at a time, it'll print out every single individual number. The first time in the loop, X is 4. The second time, X is 2. The third time, X is 7, and so on and so forth. So let's print this, let's run this. As you can see, it looped this many times, and each time it just printed out what that value was. So how's this useful for us? What if we wanted to add all these numbers together? We could have the sum starts at 0. Then we can have something like this, print sum, right? So we'll say the sum starts out to be 0. We will loop over every element in the array And each time in the loop, we're going to add x onto the existing sum. And then at the end, we'll print out the sum. So that should add all these numbers together. And it does it with this loop right here that loops over every item. So let's save it. Let's run it. Well, first, what should this be? It should be like, there's 100, 107, 109. It should be like 113. See if we get that answer. And there we do. Get the answer of 113. Now, why is that useful? Well, you know, we could have said A0 plus A1 plus A2 plus A3 plus A4, right? But what if we have so many more numbers in here, right? Now, do you want to add all these manually? No. Let's say this and run it. And there's the answer to what all of those are summed together as. And we didn't have to change anything in our loop, any of the rest of our code. We just had more items in our array. Show it all on the screen. There we go. Okay, that's one way. But this is a good way to do a loop if you need to just inspect or do something with each number. If you wanted to change the value of these items, though, this isn't going to do you much good. As we said earlier, you know, if I wanted to change a value, I have to say A, the fifth item is now equal to 5 or something, right? That's how I would change a value. Well, this for loop doesn't allow us to change any of the values. It just allows us to like get each value and do something with it. So we need a different kind of loop if we actually want to modify any of the elements. Okay. So the other way, I'm just going to type it out and then I'll explain it. For I in range length of A. So what this is doing, it says I'm going to have a variable named I, and it's going to be in the range up to the length of A. So what is the length of A? The length of A is how many items are in this array. You know, and this is probably like, it looks like about 15 numbers or something like that, right? So it's saying how long or how many items are in my array. This range says go from 0 up to this number. So for example, let's make this array smaller so we can watch what happens. Let's say the array is only this big. So obviously, we'll print the length of A. This should print a 4, right? Because 4 is how big, how many elements are in this. And then here, let's print, print I. We'll print I, and then we'll also print A, so I. So let's think about what's going on here. So here we're just going to print out the length of A, how many items are in it. It should be 4. This is going to do a loop where I starts at 0, and the highest value of I is this length minus 1. And the minus 1 is important to remember, and why? Well, think about this array A. What are the indexes for each of these elements? This is index 0, index 1, index 2, index 3, right? So the array length is 4, but the last index is 1 less, is 3. And that's because we start with 0. Again, 0, 1, 2, 3. So what the range does, it makes your I go, it starts at 0, and it goes up to the length of the array minus 1. So when we print this out, the I should be 0, then 1, then 2, then 3. And the array A, index I, should be, you know, which place in this array we're talking about with that index. Let's print that, let's run that. Did you see? So we're saying the length is 4, that's right. I is 0, and that relates to the number 4. I is 1, and that relates to the number 2. I is 2, it relates to the number 7. And I is 3, which relates to the number 99. So now we have a way to access each individual element. So now A sub I is each individual element, right? So let's see what changes we can make. Here, let's just print out the array. And in here, we'll add 1 onto each number. And then at the end, let's print the array again so we see what changed. All right, save it. So what will happen is we make the array, we print out the array in its original form. We will loop over the array. For each element, we're going to add 1 onto each element, and then we'll print it out. Let's run it. As you can see, each element did indeed increase by 1 number. And you could do, whatever number you want there. Save it. It's that. It doesn't have to be, it can be subtraction. All right. There it is. It can be multiplication. It can be division, whatever mathematical operation you want to perform. But it'll allow you to manipulate those individual elements. You can also change this into letters. This should show all of them as A's now, and it does, right? Yeah, made them all A's. So that's how you can loop over the array and then access each element, but you can also change what each element is. Okay. So let's talk about math on arrays. So we have A equals that, and B is, let's make this easy to see. A will be 1, 2, 3. B will be 4, 5, 6. All right. So you can add arrays together. Say C equals A plus B. What this will do, and we'll print out C, it'll concatenate these two, meaning it'll be C will be the result of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It just concatenates the arrays together. Oops. And sure enough, there it is. C is both the arrays put together. That's what adding them looks like. Okay. What else can we do? Let's say we have an array A, which is, say it has the number 6 in it. All right. Well, we can take this array and multiply it. Let's say multiply it by 4. Now, generally it's hard to make sense about what multiplying an array is. But what happens is when you multiply an array, it actually takes the element and repeats it that many times. So if you have this array that has this one element in it, if we multiply it by 4, then C will now have this element, but this many times. Sure enough, there's 6 is repeated 4 times. If I change this to 40 and ran it, and it's repeated 40 times, right? That's with a single element. If I have more than one element, I can still do this multiplication, but what it'll do, it'll repeat this sequence that many times. So let's run this. Sure enough, you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, repeated 4 times. So that's what happens when you multiply an array. Okay. Let's talk about array slices. Let's say if I have this array here. So if I print A, it's every single element in there, right? What I can also do is I can print a single element of A, right? So what happens when we do that? That's A. That's a single element of A. It's actually index 1, which is the 2. So that makes sense. We can print a subset of the elements as well. So in your brackets, you put the index of the first item. Let's say we want to start at 0. And then you put the index of the last item plus 1 that you want to index. And what I mean by that is, let's say we wanted the first 3 items, right? This is index 0, index 1, index 2. So since I want to start at the beginning, I use index 0. I want this to be my last, which this is index 2. So I actually have to put a 3 here. So if we run that, it should print out 1, 2, 3. And it does. There's 1, 2, 3 as the subset. Now I don't have to start at 0. I can start at 2. And let's say I make this 5. That should print what? Index 2, index 3, and index 4, which are index 2, 3, which are those numbers. So let's run that. Sure enough, there it is, 3, 4, 5. If you want to start at the beginning, you can use a 0 here, but you can actually omit the first number if you want to start at the beginning. Oh, and this is a colon right here I'm using to differentiate between the first number and the last number. So if I leave off the first number, it automatically assumes the end. So if I put a 5 here, that should go from index 0 up through index 4. Let's run that. And there it is. Okay. The same thing with the end. I can leave it empty, and that means go to the very last item. And it does. Goes up to the end. So that's what array slices are. You're just specifying a subset of the items that you want to work with. Okay. There are some, all right, let's talk about array methods. And methods are what I mean is functions that are part of an array that you can call. So there's one called a.append. And what you put in here as the argument to it is, what do you want to add to the end of the list? Let's put 99. And then we'll print A. So we'll print out A before we do it, then we'll print out A after we do it. What append does, it just adds this element to the end of the array. Save it and run it. As you can see, this was the beginning array, and we appended the 99, and there's the 99 on it. That's array.append. And again, it can be anything you want it to be. It can be a string. If you run that, sure enough, it appended this QQQ onto the end of the array. So that's array.append. There is an array.extend as well, but for extend is if you want to add on another array. So 6, 7, 8, 9. So let's print A. We'll do A.extend B. And what that does is it'll take the elements from B and add them onto the end of A. So if we run this, if we extend it, it should print the numbers 1 through 9. And sure enough, there it does. It took the elements in B and appended them or extended them onto the array A. All right. Let's make these out of order. 4, 6, 1, 9, 5, 2. Oops. Let's print it out. We have A.sort. What that'll do, it'll do exactly what you think it does. It'll sort these items in numerical order. So this is the array to start with. When we do array sort, they should be in numerical order. Let's run it. And sure enough, they are now in numerical order. If you find that useful. All right. So we can also delete items. So there's kind of two primary ways to delete an item, and it's dependent on which item you want to delete. There's array.pop with no argument, and if you do array.pop with no argument, it'll just remove the last item. So if we run this, it should remove the 2 off of there to remove the last item, and it does. The 2 is gone. There's the array.pop where you specify which index you want to remove. Let's say if we have 2 in here, it means it'll remove the item at index 2. So that's index 0, index 1, index 2. This should remove the element 1 out of this array. All right, let's save it. Let's run it. Sure enough, that 1 has now disappeared out of our array. So if you want to remove the last item, you just leave it empty. If you want to remove a specific item, you have to put the index of what you want to remove. So if you remove 4, that's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, that should remove the 5 out of there. Run it, and sure enough, the 5 is gone. Okay. A few more things we can do with array, and then I'll talk about the assignment, and we'll open up for questions. Okay. So there are a few built-in Python functions that you can do on an array. One is we talked about already, is the length of the array. This will print out how many items are in the array. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Should print out a 6. And it does. And I'm using the print here, obviously, just so that we can get the answer displayed. But printing it is not the only purpose of getting the length. As we saw earlier, when we did the for loop, we needed the length of the array to do some of the math, right? So these functions just aren't useful for printing out. It's to do something with the array, compute something with the array, and so on and so forth. I just used the quick print so we can see what the value is, and I can explain why it is that value. All right, so that's the length. We have another one called max. Some of you discovered this for one of the past few assignments. For those of you who didn't figure this out for the past few assignments, this is actually a quick and easy way to find the maximum value in an array. The slow way is to loop over every element in the array and then try to find the biggest one, right? There's also this built-in function max that will tell you what the biggest one is. So if we do max on this, it should give us a 9. Let's save it. Let's run it. And sure enough, it tells us the maximum item in there is a 9. Okay. Conversely, there is a min. Obviously, direct opposite. It'll give you the minimum value contained in this array. So when we do min, it should give us a 1. Run it, and there it is. The minimum value in this array is a 1. Okay. There's also the sum. Run this. It'll sum them all together. So it should be what, like 21, 25, should be like 27. Yep, and my math was right. The sum of all those is 27. So those are just a few of the built-in Python functions dealing with arrays. That covers all the material that you needed this week for arrays for week 7. Let me talk a little bit about the assignment, and then we will go into questions and answers. So obviously for your assignment, you're supposed to have the user input 10 temperatures in Celsius, and then you need to convert those temperatures to Fahrenheit, and then you need to count up how many days are hot, how many days are warm, how many days are cool, and so on and so forth. So let's try to do something similar, not exact. I'm not going to give you the exact answer, of course. Let's try to do something similar, right? So let's take this concept of, let's break it down into steps. So one of the first steps is having the user input, for our example, let's say 5. We're going to have the user input 5 numbers, okay? So how would we do that? How would we have them input 5 numbers? So we can have for I in range 5. I talked about the loops earlier. In the loops earlier, we had like the length of an array in here, right? But it still works the same, meaning this will loop with I starting at 0 and I going up to, but not including 5. So again, when we print this out, it should print 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. But note, that is 5 times, right? That's 5 loop iterations. Just the value of I is the indexes, associated indexes. Okay. But we're asking the user to input a number, right? So let's say the number they input, enter a number. All right. So this will loop 5 times, and it'll ask the user to input a number 5 times. Let's run that. Sure enough, enter a number 2, 5, 3, 8, 1. Sure enough, that's a good chunk of the assignment right there. Look, I looped that many times and I had the user input a number. Okay. But what if I want to, let's say I want to sum the numbers together, right? Well, I need to keep track of the numbers in an array. So how can I do this? Let's make an array. Let's call it A. That's how I make an empty array. Is don't put anything inside the brackets, and it just means it's an array, but there's nothing in it. So let's say each time they put in a number, how do I add an element to an array? I'll have the array dot append. Let's append the number they entered. And then down here at the bottom, let's print out what the array is. Okay? So I make an empty array. I loop 5 times. Each time the user inputs a number, which I save in here, and then I take what they input and append it onto my array. Okay, let's run that. 4, 7, 3, 1, 6. And look, at this point, I now have an array that has each of the items they typed in. And now I can do something with this. Let's do a math operation. Let's say we want to multiply each number by 10. So how would we do that? So we have all these array items, and we want to take each number and multiply it by 10. Well, first we need to loop over every item in the array, right? We already covered that earlier in a video. For I in range, the length of A. So this is making another loop. It'll start at 0 and it'll go over the length of A. Now A started out to be empty, but then we added stuff to it. So A now has a length of 5, because I'm saying put 5 numbers in it. And so now with each item, I said I wanted to multiply it by 10, right? So then let's print A again. So I'll loop over every item in the array. For each item in the array, I'm going to multiply it by 10, and we'll print it out. So 3, 6, 7, 3, 2. So that's the array I typed in, and then I multiplied each value by 10. And now, let's say I want to see how many numbers are greater than, how many numbers are bigger than 50. Right? How many are bigger than 50? So let's say bigger than 50 equals, it's going to start out being 0. Let's do another loop for I in range. Actually, for this one, we can do our other loop actually for X in, was it A? Remember what this is? It's another way to loop over all the items, but it's kind of like a shorter way if you don't need to change the values. You need to use this kind of loop if you want to change the values, but if you only want to just see what the values are, you can use this. So what will happen here is X will be each individual item in the array. So the first time in the loop, X will be 3, then X will be 6, then X will, or excuse me, 30, then 60, then 70, and so on and so forth. But based on whatever the user types in. So how do we see if X is bigger than 50? You type in almost exactly what you say. If X is greater than 50, do what? Bigger than 50 equals bigger than 50 plus 1. All right? So what are we doing here? And then at the end, we'll print how many are bigger than 50. So start at the top again. An empty array. We loop 5 times. Each time the user inputs a number, we add that number onto the array, and then we print our array. We loop over every item in the array. For each item in the array, we multiply it by 10, and then we print our array again. Then we're going to have a variable that's called bigger than 50. It starts being 0 because we haven't identified any numbers yet. Then for each element in the array, if that element is greater than 50, then we're just going to add one onto our bigger than 50, and then we're going to print bigger than 50. So ultimately, at the end of the day, this will tell us how many numbers in this array are bigger than 50. Let's save it. Let's run it. Let's say if we were 3, 6, 7, 3, 9. So there's our original array. There is each element multiplied by 10. And this is how many of those elements are bigger than 50. And is that right? Well, there's 1, 2, 3 of them that are bigger than 50. So that was right. That was the right answer. And that should be all the material you need to be able to successfully complete the assignment. So I will go ahead and open this up for questions. It doesn't have to be just about this week. It can be about any previous week as well, or any questions you have about the course. So the floor is open.
Hi, this is Chris. I have a question. Are you planning on doing another Zoom next week as well for the last week? Or is this the last one?
Nope, I'll do another one next week. Let me think for a second. I'm actually in the process of moving right now. I'm actually doing this from a hotel room.
Oh.
So Saturday, I'm actually driving to my next location. I will be getting there Sunday afternoon-ish. So I do plan on doing one, but it'll have to be on Sunday whenever I do it. But I will send out the invite for it, and I will have one sometime Sunday evening. I don't know the exact time yet.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so Cass asked me, what class are you teaching next semester? Right now, I think I can't remember if it's summer or fall, but I'm doing the 242 class. I don't know if that's the next in this series or not, but I'm teaching the 242 class. So I just see we have one or two people join. I've already covered all the material. This is being recorded though, and I made sure it's recording this time. So I will have the video posted up here before too long, so you can see what you may have missed. But this is an opportunity for questions and answers now. All right, nothing heard so far. I'll hold on here for like another 1 to 2 minutes. Feel free to drop off as you will. And I'll get a link sent out for this recorded video as soon as I get it uploaded. All right, Paige, for your question, see, if that is the formula to convert, then yes, that would be the perfectly good way to do that conversion. And the formula looks right, so I'm assuming you typed in the formula correctly, and if so, then it looks fine to me. But here's what you should do. So this is where your test table comes into practice, right? So in your test table, you have a column for input, column for expected output, a column for actual output, and then a column for either pass or fail, right? So let's say your input is 5. You need to manually calculate or use some other external source besides your program to calculate what should the answer be, what should the result be. And then you run it in your program and you see if your program gives you that answer that it should be. If your program gives you the answer that it should be, then you know you've done the formula correct and your program is correct.